Theatre critics, how on earth do you end up becoming a theatre critic is the question that all of you are thinking as we look at Clare Brennan sitting there in Hull, where she's based. As I said, I came across Clare when I saw her review of Every Brilliant Thing, which I really enjoyed at Theatre by the Lake. And I thought that would be an interesting person to talk to on one of these calls. So Clare, let me invite you to come off mute. And my first question to you is going to be, how on earth did you end up becoming a theatre critic? Once you've come off mute, there's probably a button that you want. There you go.
I've got it. I've got it.
Welcome, Clare.
Thank you very much. And hello to everybody. And some faces I recognise from visits to Theatre by the Lake. So hello to the faces I recognise, and sorry if I don't greet you personally. I started being a theatre critic at the same time I started being a theatre practitioner when I went to university. So I was at university in Edinburgh, which of course was if you like theatre, where could you go that's better than that? And so not only was I fortunate in that they did a course in theatre, you had a drama course, although it wasn't practical as part of the degree, but also they had a very, very active drama society, which created shows and put on shows at least once a week. And then naturally there was the festival. So I got to see some of the greatest art in the world when I was really very young. And through that, and also while I was there, so I started becoming a theatre practitioner, and I was also reviewing theatre for the student paper. And then I started to review it also for a publication called Festival Times. And that was produced by Edinburgh University Press. So I was their dance and mime editor for a year or two. And then I went and trained at L'École Jacques Lecoq in Paris, and came back from there and set up a theatre company and worked with small-scale touring theatre companies. So what you're saying about co-creation is interesting, because we did a lot of that with local organisations around Scotland, for example, and also in England. And then also about funding applications, because we had to get Arts Council funding to do that. And then by jigs and by reels, I was not happy doing devised work. We were doing devised work. And it was very obvious that you cannot devise a show in 4 weeks and do work of the quality that I think you should be doing. So I decided not to do that for a while, and was lucky enough to start to work in journalism again. And then became, little by little, was doing more writing and started to do theatre reviews for the Scotsman a little bit, for the Telegraph. And now I'm the Observer's out of London theatre critic. So my patch is the whole of the UK. And what that means is that I used to get, when we were a broadsheet, I used to get maybe 2 to 3 slots a week sometimes, but now really it's just 1 slot a week. And so you can imagine how difficult that is when you're covering the whole country, to try to cover everything.
And I presume that, yeah, so if you're based in Hull, Cornwall and kind of the north of Scotland must be, difficult places to get to.
Less so than you'd imagine, because Hull's just a hop, skip and a jump from Doncaster, and from Doncaster you can get pretty much
anywhere. Okay, fair enough. Now, I just looked at your last reviews, Clare, from the Guardian Observer website, and so in July you do a star rating for everything you see, I think. So in July you gave 5 stars, 4 stars, 4 stars, and 4 stars. In September you gave 4 stars and 3 stars, and in October, so currently, you've given 1 play 4 stars and 2 plays 3 stars. So do you ever really decide it's a load of rubbish and give it 1 or 2 stars, or even no stars?
Well, it's kind of odd. I can't remember what I've been seeing that I've given all these stars to, because normally, generally speaking, it's 3 stars. And people get very cross about that, because they think, oh, 3 stars means it's indifferent. And it doesn't mean any such thing at all, because anybody that's ever done marking knows about the bell curve. So 3 stars is most shows, and the rest fall to either side. Very seldom do you give 2 or 1 star, because almost always people have worked very hard to put on a show, and that shows, and that communicates to an audience. And so that's a merit. You can't, if a show hasn't succeeded, then it doesn't mean to say that it has no merit. And so you very seldom find that you want to give it 1 or 2 stars. I generally speak would never give 1 star, just because that's a kind of, if a show is that bad, then they'll be happy to get 1 star. and I'm not prepared to give them that satisfaction. I know some of my colleagues do, and perhaps that's childish, perhaps that's silly, but I mean, stars are a marketing tool, and we'd only do them on the website. We don't do them on the page in the Observer. So and none of the critics that I've ever met have ever had anything good to say about star ratings.
How do you choose what to go and see?
Well, I have quite a strict principle, which is I try to make sure that I undercut myself in case I've got any particular prejudices or likes that will skew my judgment. So I give my editor at least 3 options for every week, or try to. And then I send those options to my editor and we decide together what I'm going to do. And really it's based on, does something look interesting? So obviously new work is kind of a priority, or new approaches to old pieces. And then we try and think about our geographical spread. How are we doing? Have we managed to cover this, that, or the other recently? And it's really the luck of the draw. And it's very difficult in the sense that, for example, as you all know, the year goes in goes in kind of waves of openings. So after the Edinburgh Festival, which I would have been at this year, but I damaged my arms and couldn't do any writing for a month, which was a nuisance. Everything starts to open again in the whole country in September. So any given week, you could probably be doing 10 shows more. But I can only do 1. Well, by the time I've got through 2 or 3 weeks, we're running out, and I can't really start doing. Most shows don't have a run of longer than 2 to 3 weeks. So you're kind of that also affects what you can see and how much you can cover and how much of the country you can get to cover.
Yeah. And I mean, how often do you venture to Cumbria, for example?
It's not. There isn't a set. I will come to Cumbria every X. There are phases when I'm more often in Cumbria and phases when I'm less often in Cumbria. And like that, it depends a bit what's on. So, for example, Theatre by the Lake now does more co-productions than it used to. Everybody does more co-productions than they used to. If it does, so that means I might see a show somewhere else. Also, people are going for a lot more. I'm not saying that Theatre by the Lake is doing this, but people generally are going for a lot more safe work, a lot more small scale work, because that's what they can afford to do. Well, I'm thinking about all the readers of the paper on a Sunday. So if they want, obviously people in an area might look at a local theatre review, but other people are likely to look at. I mean, I certainly read all theatre reviews and used to when I was young. So the show has to be of general interest as well.
Okay. And I'm assuming you have word counts and all that kind of thing. How do you prepare, and what's, how do you structure a theatre review? Is there a sort of mechanic that you follow in your mind?
My word count is 300 words. That's it. Sometimes I can squeeze in 10 extra if I'm really lucky. No, there's no particular structure. There's a kind of checklist of things that you need to remember to mention. The name of the director is useful. Usually, if you can manage some of the names of the actors, that's pretty good. You try to mention design. You try to mention. Ideally, you'd mention all aspects of the production, and you talk about how people approach something, etc., etc. But you can't. In 300 words, you're going to just have to try to communicate what was it about, how did it come across, and who was in it. Those are your main things, and usually the piece itself will tell you how to go about that.
Okay. And have you ever, written something? I'm assuming the answer to this is yes, but if it is yes, I love an anecdote. Have you ever, written a review about something perhaps which you didn't really enjoy and had pushback, or from the director or from the actors saying, "How dare you write that about me? I can't believe that you wrote that about me. You've affected my career," or anything like that?
Yeah, well, very seldom from the director and actors. I think mostly either they don't read the reviews, which, I mean, certainly I know actors who don't read reviews, and I don't blame them. I did have once a very famous novelist writing to me who'd adapted something for the stage and wrote to me personally and was furious about what I'd written. It happens very seldom, to be honest. If you get pushback, it might be below the line comments from unidentifiable people, some of whom maybe are the director or the actors, but you wouldn't know because below the line people aren't obliged to give their names.
When you say below the line people, you mean?
On your, when you look at the review online, if you scroll down, there'll be a comment section.
Right.
Those are called below the line, below the end of the review. People put their comments, and sometimes those people give positive comments, sometimes people give negative comments, and usually most people are very, they have their point of view, and it's very interesting to hear it. And sometimes they bring something interesting, and I may not share their point of view, but I try if I can, if it's not just trying to if it's not a closed statement, then I try to respond and discuss. And sometimes the person and I will kind of come to an accommodation that we agree to differ, or we saw it differently, or whatever. I quite like that. I quite like that discussion.
Yeah. So you read reviews of your reviews?
Responses to the reviews, certainly. Yes. Yeah.
So I'm going to invite anyone to chip in and ask any questions here. I know that Matthew has written a few reviews in his time as well. I don't know if you two know each other, even Claire and Matthew, but no. Okay, but so I'll invite Matthew to share his observation in a second. But can I just ask you, Claire, do you think reviews still matter? They're quite an old-fashioned thing in some ways, and certainly locally in local journalism, there isn't much reviewing going on at the moment for basically cost-cutting reasons. If I'm being generous. If I'm not being generous, it's because people don't think they matter as much, I guess. But do you think reviews still matter?
I think I'd reply likely a reason, not the need. It's like saying, does theatre matter? Oh, yes or no. What do you think? Do the arts matter? You may as well say, does air matter, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. Either you breathe or you don't breathe. Either you live or you don't live. If you live, then art is part of your life. It can't be otherwise. And reviews are part of a dialogue around art, and dialogue is a part of life. So in that sense, yes, absolutely, I think. And reviewers are people who spend a lot of time trying to think about and engage with theatre. And so they have a huge horizon, and ought to have, and a huge depth of knowledge. And so they can bring that to their, they can offer that to readers. And then that allows readers to engage with them. We're very lucky with online that you can do that. Or to engage with one another and say, what a load of rubbish Clare Brennan wrote this week, or I thought she was right, or why didn't she say this, or whatever, or I can say that about anybody else. And so reviews encourage discussion, encourage dialogue, encourage engagement, encourage depth of engagement, and in that sense, I think they're very necessary.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Kate. Matthew, would you like to come off mute and just share your observation or question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Maybe tell us a little bit about what you do as well.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Hi. I just run a kind of localized media. Well, I'm not good at describing what I do, but I used to work for the Times actually as a classical music critic. So I was particularly interested in hearing you this morning, Claire. But my question on the chat was, I noticed that you mentioned that you used to work for the Telegraph and then you moved to the Observer. And I remember when I used to work across the broadsheets as a sub-editor, and there was a lot of cross-fertilization of staff and critics and opinionators of all sorts. And I always thought that was always very odd to me. It seemed that they have their own discrete places, these broadsheet newspapers politically, and how can people comfortably work for the Mail and then work for the Mirror and then work for the Guardian and then work for the Telegraph? And when I worked as a classical music critic, I never had any kind of party line to toe or pressure on me to be, I'm avowedly left wing, to be maybe more centre right, along with the Times. And I was just wondering whether there's ever any pressure on you to see things that are ethically the party line, or to reflect opinions, or is there any political pressure on you?
None whatsoever. But I'm never in the office. But like you, I've been a freelance and I've worked in the Times. I was actually an editor on the Times for a couple of years. I was the deputy editor of the weekend section. And if you remember David Driver on the arts desk, well, he was a paid-up communist for a lot of his life. So and nobody ever challenged his views really. So the papers, all have their particular position, but that very seldom affects somebody like me as a reviewer, I don't think. I know on some papers, for example, when you talk about stars, I know that there are some papers where the editors interfere on the stars and the reviewers don't get the final say, but that's not the case for my paper.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks,
Amy, did you want to just mention what you've put in chat there about, we're basically in a review culture these days?
Yeah, and I think Roisin's just messaged me about the same, although I don't know if she meant to put that just to me after the full chat, but it was just to say that it's like a culture of reviewing. Every time you interact online, every time you buy something, every time you have a meal, there's always a little reminder on your phone asking you to give stars. The star rating is definitely something that's, how many stars does your delivery driver get, and how many stars does your Uber driver get or taxi driver get? It's kind of a culture of reviewing in a way. And Roisin's actually said that, everyone's an artist and everyone's a critic. And she's wondering if it's important to maintain professionalism in reviews and in that work, which I think is an interesting point, because I think everybody feels that their opinion is important and matters. And, I'm sure that social media has kind of changed reviewing over the years.
I think there's a difference between an opinion and a review in a way. And it would be like, for example, I could never review music. I'm not a musician. I don't understand music. I can give my opinion on it quite happily. And I think that people talk about taste very much as if taste was so different in each person that you can't have common ground. But I think two things about that, or two examples about that make me wonder if that's the case. And one is that if I'm listening to music, although I know nothing about it, I can tell if somebody's singing off key. And that matters in certain musics. Now, in other musics, it doesn't matter. And where it matters, it's good to know that it matters and why it matters and how it matters. And so I think that that's not a question of taste. That's a question of, in certain circumstances, it's important that singers are singing together and on key. And then the other example is if you watch something like MasterChef, not the critics on MasterChef, but the chefs. I think food is you would imagine it's such a particular taste. And yet the chefs are so interesting in the way that they are able to describe how they do what they do. And then they're able to discuss with the people who participate how they've done what they've done and what the result is and whether or not the result has succeeded, even though you'd imagine that your taste on your tongue must be terribly personal. Yet actually it's not. And I'm very instructed by hearing how those chefs respond. Similarly, by listening to football pundits. When you hear footballers talking about a game, or former footballers talking about a game, or former gymnasts talking about gymnastics, I learn such a lot from them because they have a trained eye. And their trained eye enables them to see things that I have not been able to see, perceive, or understand. And a critic, in a way, or a reviewer, as I prefer to say, because you can't be a critic with 300 words. You can be a reviewer. So a reviewer's job is to bring all of that and try to offer that to the reader. Within 300 words, it can be tricky, and it's an offering. It's not, and the other thing is, I don't think a critic is a judge. A critic is an evaluator, or a reviewer is an evaluator. So there's no judgment, final judgment. You can't do that, but you can offer an informed analysis, if you like.
I'm looking forward to some football analogies appearing in some Observer Theatre reviews in the coming weeks and months.
I have done that.
Okay. We'll come to Derek in a second, but Sue had a hand up first. Sue, off you go.
Hi there. Well, as someone who does reviews for local publications, I think there's two sorts of review. I will review shows at Theatre by the Lake, for example, Cumbria Live magazine. And that's one thing, and it's short. It might be a bit more than 300 words, but it's short. And I think my role there is to be an everyman or every woman. I'm Joe Public. What do I think? So to put aside everything else and see what your response is to something in the limit of words. But then there are other unpaid reviews that I do for amateur groups, for example, particularly choirs. I'm involved with choirs and music making. So I have reviewed classical concerts, folk concerts, but especially choir concerts. And if they want a review for the local press, you just get your tickets is the only payment. You've actually got to do something else. You're actually kind of promoting that choir, and I kind of work to a formula. There'll always be something I can critique, you know, whether someone's singing out of tune or the tenors just aren't there, or they're late or something like that. But overall, yeah, the agenda is to give a good impression of that amateur group. So that's a very different beast from the theatre reviews that I do.
That's interesting. It's an interesting contrast, isn't it?
Mm.
Derek, and then Verity.
Yes, I'd just like to ask one very simple question. Given your experience, you must know a lot of the people involved in shows that you are reviewing. So how do you set yourself to be completely objective?
Well, in point of fact, I don't tend to know that many people in the shows that I'm reviewing, is one thing. There are most relationships are professional, and so I've had very few close friends in theatre, and even fewer whom I would review. One or two whom I would review, if they don't like it, tough. They're professionals, and if they never speak to me again, that's the way that cookie crumbles. But I would think it was a lack of professionalism on their part, and that would be a shame. There are only two people that I will not review because I feel that we're too close, and I've said that to my editor. So that's just that. And I sit on the UK Theatre Awards panel, and I've only once had to withdraw from talking about a company because I knew a person in it too well. But if that happens, then it happens, and I just step aside.
As a whole, you keep things slightly at a distance, slightly at arm's length, and that allows you to help retain your objectivity, I guess.
Well, I think everybody is professional. So if you're a professional, just as if somebody said to me they'd never speak to me again if I gave them a bad review, then I wouldn't be able to take that into account. It's not my job to take that into account. But I wouldn't think it was very professional of them. And equally, if somebody decided not to speak to me again because they didn't like what I'd said as a review, I just think, well, they're not a friend, and that's not professional. So it's a failure of friendship and professional relationship.
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah.
Good question, Derek. Thank you. Verity, and then Stefan.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering if your work as a reviewer affects the way that you enjoy theatre in your personal life and the things that you just enjoy as a theatre goer. I work in museums, and my degree was museumy, and while I still love museums and I'm sure I always will, it's just an interest. When I went on holiday recently, I found I felt a bit museumed out. So actually, it was one of the things that we put to the bottom of the list unexpectedly. Do you find anything similar with theatres?
Well, when I was in theatre and practicing in theatre, then I would not necessarily want to go to theatre as relaxation. I used to be very critical.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm a theatre reviewer, I love going to theatre and I'm not reviewing. I just really enjoy it. I don't have to take notes. I can just sit back. I can like it. I can not like it. I mean, obviously, a bit of me is going ting, 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 ting. But the rest of me just goes, hooray. I just, I'm going to have an ice cream. If I want, I can have a drink in the interval. Fantastic. I just love it.
Thank you. Great question, Verity. I like the fact you did a museumy thing as well. That's a great adjective. Is that an adjective or an adverb? No, it's an adjective. Stefan.
You mentioned evaluation, Claire, and I'm just curious, I don't know if you have time, but do you get involved in the evaluation of work? It's such a valuable part of the process and necessary for funding. Is that something you do as well?
You mean in terms of Arts Council evaluation?
Arts Council evaluation, or the evaluation process for perhaps theatre companies, how they run and particular projects? You don't do that?
No, I certainly wouldn't evaluate for the Arts Council. I have very strong feelings about the way that the Arts Council does things, and I'm not very convinced by the way they approach things or by the way they carry things through. And that stems back for many, many, many years. It's not just recent. And I've seen some of their evaluation sheets, and I don't rate them very highly. I don't like it. And I've worked abroad. I worked with theatre companies abroad where we went, and the way that things worked were very different. Your funders were much more directly answerable to you. They were happy to speak to you. They treated you with respect. So, and nobody's ever asked me. I mean, the arts isn't. I can't get on a high horse. I've never been asked, but where I'd be, I would not want to do that. And no, I think a lot of theatre companies, if you try and talk to people in theatre or theatre directors and people like that, some of them get very nervous and say, oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk to a critic. What's it? You know? And I find that bizarre, but there you go. So I think people are a bit nervous of critics. I don't know why, but it's interesting. It's interesting. It's an interesting thought. I mean, I'll happily, some people I know, we talk about theatre, but you talk about theatre just the way we would talk about theatre. You know?
Are you on the? Can I ask? Are you on the board, or are you a critical friend for any companies? You mentioned you've got close relationships with some practitioners.
I was once invited.
Expertise would be really helpful.
I was once invited to be on a board, but I pointed out that I would call that a conflict of interest, and I would never be able to review them if I did that. So that would be there's that to take into account. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefan. For me, I think the best night out is going to the theatre and seeing something. I love going to the theatre, and I go to the theatre loads, and it's always usually a treat. Not always. I saw a bit of a duff thing quite recently, actually. Won't mention what it was or where it was. Is there a particular show, Claire, that perhaps in recent times or times further back that particularly sticks in your mind as that was an astonishingly brilliant performance, and it kind of has stayed with you?
Yeah, I think we all go back to youth, don't we, when we think of the shows that really stay with you. And one of the things that I think is really sad in Britain, and it's not just a post-Brexit thing, is that we don't get to see enough foreign theatre. We're very, very parochial in Britain. And I remember seeing Tadeusz Kantor in the Edinburgh Festival when I was young, the great Polish director. And also seeing Dario Fo. And also seeing other things. And I just... there's a theatre company from Tbilisi that came, Tumanashi Valley Company, who did a Don Juan. And I think that those companies, because they came from different cultures and they had different perspectives, and their theatre practice was very different, they do what theatre does, but they do it to a greater degree, which is they open up your eyes to the world, and they open up your eyes to the possibilities of human interaction in ways that you couldn't have foreseen. And all theatre does that to a greater or lesser degree. It's just that those performances perhaps did it to a greater degree because I wasn't familiar with their culture or their practice. But over the years, there are so many different, you just can't single out a performance and say that's the one, that's the medium, isn't it? It's never going to be the same really twice. Even the same performance might not be the same twice. And that's one of the joys.
That was going to be my wrap-up question, but Monique has shoved her.
Sorry, yes.
So no, you go for it, Monique. This is the final question, probably.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I agree. By the way, Claire, missing international theatre very much. I used to live in the Netherlands, and we used to get a lot of UK groups performing there, which was always brilliant. Anyway, what I wanted to ask is about the writing process. So, do you structure your reviews the same way every time, or do you try and make it different? Because I find that so myself very difficult to not sort of fall into the thing about the first paragraph is always this, the second paragraph is always going to be that. Do you do that, or do you mix it up, and how do you do that?
Yeah, Michael Coveney has a great story about review writing. When in the old days, and they used to have to do the overnight review where the critic had to race out of the theatre, get to a payphone, have a stack of coins, and be filing their copy, down the line. And somebody said to him, "How did you do that, Michael?" And he said, "I used to imagine there was a man with a gun standing behind me and pointing the gun at my head." And in a way, I feel a bit like that, but I have a luxury because I write for a Sunday paper. So I usually see a show in the evening, and then I have to file by midday the next day. So I could write the review that night, but I always try to sleep on it because I think it's a luxury to have that time. And there's you react differently to the show after you've slept on it. So I just get up and then I try and see the show in my head, and I try and think, how can I tell the reader this? And so I don't think about the structure of the review so much. I just think, how can I say, what do I think I have to say? How can I say it? And how can I get in all the facts? And sometimes what you find is that you can't do it. You know, sometimes you can't say what you want to say. So you have to tell the reader what you think they need to know. And that's, for me, that's the priority. What does the reader doesn't need to know what I think. The reader needs to know what the show is like and what it's about and what might be interesting in it. And so that defines the review for me anyway, rather
Thank you,
than
Monique.
a priori structure.
Thank you.
300 words is not a lot of words, is it? And I just flicking through some of your reviews this morning. They are, you know, things of beauty within themselves. Just the sparseness and actually the efficiency of the writing is a really impressive, Claire. I'm just going to finish with a note from that I think Amy's put into chat. I don't think we're taught the value of criticism at school or in life. It can allow you to improve or teach you what you do and don't like. Being part of an art crit group has helped me as an artist, and learning music at school helped too. It can sting at first to receive not positive feedback, but I suspect things then get better once you've consumed it and allowed it to sink in. I think that's a really interesting analysis of what we can do to help each other and support each other. And for me, you know, I love reading theatre reviews, and absolutely it can help me make decisions about whether to go and see it, but they're just really interesting pieces of writing in themselves. So thank you. As Matthew's put in chat as well, Claire, great chat. Thank you, everyone. Andrew's put, that was joyous and informative. Thank you, Claire. So thank you very much, Claire, for coming and talking and sharing those thoughts with us this morning. It's been really interesting, and I've found that really a stimulating conversation. Thank you to everybody for your questions and observations and notes as well.
Well, thank you very much as well, because it's been very interesting for me, and it's been nice to be stimulated to have to think about it in this way, and to meet you and to hear your views, and that's been great. So thank you all very much indeed.
Lovely, and you're welcome to Cumbria anytime, Claire. Whether it's
I love coming to Cumbria. I really enjoy it.
Whether you're scheduled to on the whatever or not, there's always great stuff going on here, and do look out for what we're doing. So thank you very much, and do stick around, because we've got in the final 15 minutes or so, we're going to hear now from Roisin and from Vega, and we've got 1 or 2 slides that Amy is going to put up and share. And Roisin and Vega, when you want Amy to move on, just say next slide, please, to tell us about the project you're doing about education and the arts in the Northwest. So over to you to tell us a bit more about that.
Hello, I don't know if Vega wants to unmute as well, but we're here today to talk about Art Educators Northwest, which is a network for art educators. Vega might talk a little bit more about the background of the network, but we relaunched last year with a bit more of a focus on Cumbria. And it's basically a network to kind of share good practice between arts educators, informal and formal, throughout all phases of education. Teachers don't often have the opportunity to share practice when you're kind of just in your own like bubble in your own school, and it can be quite a lonely kind of profession really, and so busy and detached from the wider art world, which is ideally not what arts education will be. So yeah, I might just pass to Vega quickly just for a bit more background on that, because she was involved in the network before I kind of came into it.
I like this animation, by the way. It's great. I love the fact that they're all making things and drawing things. It's lovely.
Cool. Well done, Roisin. Yeah, I actually looked up when I founded Arts Educators Northwest, and it was 2009, which is such a long time ago. I can't believe that it's been going for this long. It came really out of like Roisin said, the sense of isolation that art teachers get, because a lot of art teachers are just either one or 2 people in a school. And the only time they used to get together was these really, really dreadful exam board meetings, where you'd usually get some patronizing person from the exam board talking about how to mark GCSE or A-level work. And everyone was just moaning and miserable and just not, it was never a good time. it was really sad. And I just thought, well, you know, we've got all these skills, we've got all these interests. Can we not get together and do stuff that actually celebrates what we do and support each other? So just off my own bat, I got in touch with the local authority and said, can I set up this network? And he said, yeah, go ahead, but there's no money. And it was like, okay, no money, that's fine. I'll just do it anyway. So I just emailed every single school in Cumbria. I was particularly focused on secondary at the start and said, look, I want to start these network meetings. Let's try meeting here. And I got in contact with Tully House, and also Lakeland Arts got involved as well. And we started having these termly meetings where it would either be focused around an exhibition or it'd be hosted in a school where a teacher would host it and teach the rest of the group a particular skill. There was also newsletters that went out, and it was just a sort of really nice way of having a sort of centralized point where I could support teachers. So, for example, an art teacher might say, oh, we only get like half a day technician time in our department per week. And I'd go, okay, so which of our colleagues gets 1 or 2 days? And that could support them by saying, go to the head teacher and saying, look, we need more time. We need a budget. We need this, we need that, because it's happening in other schools. No head teacher wants to be seen to be really mean to art teachers, really. So it came from there. So it's mostly centered around art teachers, but then obviously, because I was working with Tully House and with Lakeland Arts, it made sense to get involved with people involved in arts education as well, so freelancers. So it's going to be a network of about 300 people. And it's across, it sort of dips down a little bit into Lancashire as well, and possibly up into Scotland. And we're now kind of in the process of sort of reshaping the organisation. I've stepped away from it for a little bit because I've just been so busy doing other things, Cumbria Printmakers and Tully Community Board and various other bits and pieces. But I'm just really excited for this next phase, and I'm really pleased that Lakeland Arts is picking this up and running with it, really. So that's kind of the background. I hope that gives you enough information about what we do. But yeah, I'll let Roisin talk about what the next step is.
Thank you, Vega. Background there, really important. I think even this network is a testament to the fact that we are better together, like cheesy, but it's in the arts, it's just rolling when you are connected. So yeah, but can I please go on to the next slide? Yeah, that one. Oh, you've still got the brown one. Sorry about that. I don't know if that's easy to see, but the way we've decided to shape
Roisin, we're just losing your sound a little bit, Roisin. So do you want to just turn your camera off? And probably that will help.
Okay. Hopefully that's a bit better.
Yep, it is.
So the way that we've decided to shape things this year is slightly different to what we've done before, and we're going to host the network at Lakeland Arts venues with the intention of kind of showing art educators, so teachers and also freelancers and practitioners and anyone involved in the arts, the exhibitions that we have on at Lakeland Arts, because part of the way that we work in education is we do have a kind of standard education offer that you would imagine from a museum setting, but we also work in quite a bespoke way with various schools to deliver project work actually that meets the needs of both the exhibition participation but also the school and the children involved themselves. So we've kind of decided to take this exhibition approach where the art educators can come to a venue and we'll actually host them and show them around the exhibition and kind of brainstorm ways that you could respond to the programme at Lakeland Arts, and also additionally to that, how teachers can kind of brainstorm and share practice amongst each other. So our first event is soon. It's in person on Thursday the 9th of November at Abbott Hall Art Gallery in Kendal. 4:30 till 6:30, and educators will get a free chance to look around the Julie Brooke exhibition with a curator, hopefully with the kind of teaching hat on, where they can think about how they might respond to this work in their own education art practice. And then we've got another one in December, which is the Jocelyn McGregor exhibition at Woodmere Jetty. Next year, in March, it'll be at Albert Hall again with Claude Cahoon and Gilbert Spencer. And then we'll hopefully have a bit of an end of year social gathering in July. So we're kind of going via the academic term really to set this up. What I would say is that this isn't a Lakeland Arts project. It's something to may sound like it is, but it's not. It's the network very much runs itself and is shaped by those involved in it. And we are open to changing where the network's hosted. There's opportunity for online meetups as well. So we work with Kerry Howarth as well, who is a primary art consultant. So there is this spread across kind of all age groups, and we're going to hopefully get involved with Kendal College and just working right across the spectrum. I think it used to be a bit of a CMC wide project actually, and we would go to different venues like Tully and Wordsworth and all that, but it's kind of ended up kind of moving downwards a little bit, so we'll see how it's shaped going forward. But just really excited for anyone and everyone to come along if you feel that it's something that could benefit you. It's always useful to share good practice. Does anyone have any questions?
Sue was saying in chat, sounds great. Back in the day, Cumbria Arts and Education actually did have funding for an office and a person to run projects, often co-production with other arts organisations. Funding came from the County Council and the Arts Council. Its successor organisation became something quite different with a number of staff, but never seemed as successful as the original. So enthusiasm from the Wigton part of Cumbria. Any questions from anybody else for either Roisin or Vega? Amy says, sounds like a brilliant network.
More of a comment, really, Roisin and Vega. Hopefully, you know that CACN will help you in whatever way we can in terms of getting the word out and whatever else you need from us. And I just would encourage you to stay in touch and use CACN as a sort of channel and a source of people who will be supportive.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the weekly newsletter that we produce goes to about 500 people now, I think, about that. Amy will correct me if I've got that wrong. The Facebook group's about 2,100, something like that. And the Instagram account and the Twitter account are pretty vibrant as well. Amy, is that about right on the newsletter?
I actually think we're close to 600 now.
600, great, okay. And we, and I'm sure not everyone opens it every week, and that's fine. But it's a good way of just trying to, part of the role of this network is just to keep people informed about stuff going on, as well as championing and advocating. So great to hear from you, Roisin and Vega, about that. That sounds great. Sometimes the easy bit is setting stuff up. The difficult bit is keeping stuff going, isn't it? As we all know. I'm seeing nods around the room there. So I wish you success with that. And as Kate says, anything we can do to support on these Friday calls or elsewhere, that's part of our role, I think. Lovely. Okay. Well, thank you, Roisin and Vega. Good luck with that. Are there any other parish notices from anyone else about anything else? Anyone doing anything exciting this weekend? Stefan's got a show in Blackburn. So good luck with that, Stefan. I've seen it.
Thank you.
Claire was mentioning it before, and it's a great show, so I hope that goes well. Taken out of Cumbria. Have you taken out of Cumbria before?
Yeah, we've been abroad.
Of course, you went to Romania, didn't you?
Oh, no, with that show. No, we went to Wales. We went to Wales. No, we're getting around. Yeah, we bring cowboy joy everywhere we go.
Excellent. Anything else going on that anyone needs to tell us about?
I mean, I did mention at the start, but we're filming the first trailer for the Christmas show tomorrow morning.
And what's the Christmas show called again?
It's A Little Princess, so it's a new adaptation. It's sort of an anti-racist, an anti-racist adaptation of A Little Princess, adapted by, I'm going to say Amanda Dalton, and I'm going to double check that as I say it.
Stefan says it is.
Yes, yeah. So we're filming the first teaser trailer tomorrow morning with the cast who started rehearsals this Monday.
And Liz is directing that. Liz Stevenson's directing that. Is that right?
She is,
Okay.
yes.
Great. Okay, so it's bound to be good. So good luck with that, Shelley, and good luck with the filming. Look forward to seeing how that all pans out. And when's the first performance?
You're making me look at my brochure
All right,
again, Tom.
I think it's sometime in November, isn't it? Sometime late
Friday
November.
the 17th of November.
Okay, all right. Nothing like putting people on the spot. I enjoy doing that. Yeah.
When it's when it's the season of this brochure that I'm making, I'll be able to tell you all the dates off the top of my head.
All right. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
I'm just now just checking chat. People putting things in chat. Speakeasy coming up. Phil's fantastic group, spoken word stuff, which takes place sometimes online, sometimes in person. Vega's hosting four visual artists to make letterpress prints in the studio for the next 2 days, and other bits and bobs there. So have a look at those. Great that it's one of your very favorite books, Kate. So you'll be going to see it probably 3 or 4 times at Theatre by the Lake.
At least.
At least. And maybe we might get Claire to come and review it. You never know. Thank you, everybody, for this morning. Thank you very much to Claire, in particular, for telling us, sort of lifting the lid under the bonnet, mixing my metaphors of being a theatre critic. Thanks very much also to Roisin and to Vega. Good luck with that project. And thanks to Kate and Amy about telling us all about the quarterly. The next one, I guess, will be sometime in the spring of next year, and all the other bits and bobs, sects and meetups and various bits of training going on that the network is producing to hopefully help us here in Cumbria. Lovely to see you all. Stay safe and stay dry and don't get caught up in the wind. Have a nice weekend. And next week, we're going to hear from Hannah Kessler, who is setting up a project in Millom called All Kinds. It's part of the We Are Here Creative People and Places project going on in West Cumbria. And also one of the young women, Molly and Sophie, setting up Molly Somo, which is a University of Cumbria new network for artists who are either based there or who have recently graduated there. They're just trying to get some vibrancy and some connectivity going on with artists coming out of the University of Cumbria. So that sounds really interesting as well, and be good to hear from them. So that is the plan for next week. Thank you, everybody. It's been a lovely meeting. Nice to hear you all. Nice to see you all. See you again soon.
Bye,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye all. Have a lovely weekend.
You too, Andrew.
Bye-bye.